From the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network studios in Des Moines, this is Iowa Ag Matters. I'm Riley Smith. In today's show, Mark hears from a session at the Iowa Farm Bureau Economic Summit with Robert Lighthizer. I have the weekly export sales with Greg McBride of Allendale. And Dustin talks about Southern Rust with Gail Stratman of FMC. Now let's welcome in our hosts, Mark Magnuson and Dustin Huffman.
Well, we are back on another edition of Iowa Ag Matters, and boy, is it hot outside today. Corn is sweating. I think everything's sweating here today, Mark. Saw heat index is over 120 degrees in some parts of the central part of the state. Looking like it'll be even hotter today. I'm not looking forward to what kind of thunderstorms it's going to take to bring this heat dome down again, as we're talking later tonight and possibly into tomorrow, even with some strong thunderstorms. This could be another rock'em sock'em night in weather-wise and getting this cooled down. But this is, when you're going outside and you're already got heat exhaustion, stepping 2 feet out of your door, that's pretty much Mother Nature off her meds here today.
You're definitely on there, Dustin. You know, I'm looking right now at my screen. It says 87 degrees, but you walked outside this morning, you would have been convinced it was 95. I mean, it was so humid, so hot. And I'm with you as well. Yesterday, when I was outside, I was just thinking, man, what kind of a storm are we going to be dealing with? What's brewing up here with this weather that we're having right now? And usually when we do have a heat spell like this, you know that storm is what it's going to take to have to break through and bring us back to a little bit more normal temperatures. And speaking of that, that is kind of one of the big factors in the ag marketplace today. As we got to the studio here this morning, we took a look at the ag screens, and man, a lot of red on the screen. Now there's many different factors playing into that, but as it relates immediately to the grain side, one of those big factors is we've got more moisture, more rainfall in the immediate forecast, or that short-term forecast to midterm forecast as we get ready for the end of the month and the start of August. And that has kind of turned things into a negative direction here today. And then, as we've been following here along closely with over the past few weeks, the war news has kind of turned as well, and the oil price weighing on the markets as well.
Yeah, the oil price took a shellacking overnight, down to $85, which is about a $15 or so loss. And so that's a big deal. But as you said, war premiums coming off as well, because the president did not go forward with a large full-scale strike on Iran this weekend, and said that Iran seems to be wanting to come back to the table and talk again. And so we'll see if that plays out. Russia and Ukraine trying to de-escalate the situation as well. So there's a lot of premiums being taken off the board there. I mean, it's just the way the way the world goes. And of course, if we can see temperatures cool down and some rain back in the forecast, that is going to help beans as they approach their time for setting pods, and also, take some of the stress off the corn, because while corn loves heat, this is when it's really having the hardest time for itself and reproducing and producing its ears. And so it's really put strain on the crop to maybe have a little bit of a back off in the temperature would do it a world of good. But as we talk, the only thing that really is in the positive territory is non-fat dry milk and cash settled butter prices. That's the only thing we're seeing not in the negative territory right now, Mark.
Yeah, it is one of those days where it is just almost literally red across the board, which is frustrating, but you can see all of those factors that are weighing on the marketplace. And as you mentioned, with the storms that we're expecting here tonight, haven't dived into it fully. Are we looking at any kind of dangerous winds that we need to be concerned about, Dustin, or hail? Have you heard about those factors at all?
I have not heard about anything in depth in this situation with the weather, but also, from the years I took storm training and spotter training and all that, I would not be surprised to see, if the storm fronts come through with a cold front, that hail is very much a part of that, and strong winds. Whether or not there's tornadic activity, there's a lot to be seen there, but hail and strong winds are going to be something that we're going to have to watch out for sure. And again, this could be tonight, this could be tomorrow, but sometime it's supposed to finally let up. Let's get into the markets now, as we have Greg McBride of Allendale talking with Mark Magnuson about the grains.
Joined today by Greg McBride of Allendale for the opening market discussion. Greg, what's happening with the trade in the grains?
Well, we are seeing immediate pressure on the open last night as the crude was down about $5 or $6 overnight. Really just a very quiet weekend over Iran. The U.S. had pulled back on their attacks. Iran had actually said we'll do the same thing as long as the U.S. is not attacking. Not necessarily a ceasefire, but calming of things. President Trump had said that he was going to calm things down a little bit to allow for diplomacy to have another chance over there. So that started the movement down, and then we added a little bit of rain and cooler temperatures to the overall forecast. Now, obviously, today and tomorrow and even yesterday were very hot across most of the Midwest. Some of those rains are just fill-in rains. They're just going to really be just in time type rains, not necessarily rains that are going to fix any kind of stress or issues. But the cooler temperatures will help as we finish out our pollination period. So we are getting beaten up for about 12 cents in the corn. It's 38 to 40 cents or so in the beans. The wheat is actually holding it together, even though there are conversations about the idea of a ceasefire agreement between Russia and Ukraine potentially shaping up later on this week or towards the end of this week. So.
And what does the situation look like with the oil price right now?
So oil had gotten back up to about $93 a barrel on the September contract. It's all the way back down to 84 this morning. It's still a couple of dollars off the intraday lows here. So this is just big swings that we've seen as the tensions in the Middle East have risen, or as tensions between Ukraine and Russia have risen. You see the market about the middle of last month really take off to the high side, and or middle of July take off to the high side after trading down closer to about $70. We made it, like I said, above 93, and that's spillover buying really fell into the grains and helped as part of our reasoning for rallying on top of adding some weather premium.
Looks like another perfect day to get out there and enjoy the summer.
You hear that? Live music, laughing kids, the roar of the rides, and someone yelling, "Corn dogs!" That's Fair Spirit at the Iowa State Fair, August 13th through 23rd in Des Moines. 11 days of blue ribbon traditions, big summer nights, incredible food, and the kind of memories you talk about all year long. This is your Iowa State Fair. Plan your visit now at iowastatefair.org.
August 13th through the 23rd.
Coming up next here on Iowa Ag Matters, we will hear more from Greg McBride of Allendale with the latest export sales news. Riley Smith will have that next on Iowa Ag Matters.
Well, we're keeping Greg McBride with us here on Iowa Ag Matters. It is time for a recap of the latest weekly export sales report, and it sounds like there wasn't a whole lot to write home about. Greg McBride of Allendale once again talking with Riley Smith about what we see in that report.
On the phone right now with Greg McBride of Allendale as we take a look at the weekly U.S. export sales report. Greg, first off, when we take a look at the corn side of the export sales, what do we see this week from the USDA?
Total sales came in just over 1 million tons, 332,000 for old crop and 701,000 tons for the new crop. We don't necessarily pay that close attention to the old crop sales at this time of the year because we are going into the end of the marketing year. So now we're really just paying attention to shipments, which are doing just fine. They're running lightly ahead, so we should hit the numbers that we need to hit as far as getting the corn that is sold out the door before the end of the marketing year.
And then for the soybeans, we know it's been a little bit more of a complicated situation. How did those sales look this week?
Yeah, again, it's because we are headed into the end of the marketing year. We don't necessarily pay attention to the sales on the old crop side of things. Those came in relatively low at 56,000 tons, but those shipments are still ahead of hopes. So we're doing very well. New crop sales very good at 1.54 million tons. That was right in the middle of the range of estimates. We were looking at anywhere from 1 million tons to 1.8 million tons. So overall, very good. We have seen a rebound and an improvement in new crop sales, and that is what we need. We started out very slow. We saw the USDA on the last WASDE report increase export demand by 30 million bushels. So we'll continue to watch for that. I'm not sure exactly what they were looking at as far as how far behind we were. We had just started to make sales, but those sales have picked up, and we do look good. We're still slightly behind the 5-year average, but overall looking better than we were.
And then when we look at the sales to China, that's been a big focus here recently. Have they made more purchases towards that export goal? And just kind of how are we stacking up with that deal?
Yeah, we usually will watch unknown sales of soybeans and attribute those to China. Between the sales directly to China and unknown, at this point, we've booked about 5 million tons. So they are coming back and speeding up the pace a little bit, which is a good sign. Again, this is something that those numbers are all kind of baked into the USDA's goal. So we are doing pretty well, but we'd like to see a little more to warrant these higher prices. The way that things are going right now with the demand situation, as good as it is, we're still overpriced compared to where the actual ending stocks are.
All right, Greg, lots of great information today. For anybody who would like to get in touch for more marketing information, how can they do that?
Give us a call at 800-2-MARKET. That's 800-262-7538.
Your local radio station brings you the local news you depend on. The Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network complements that with ag news, weather, and market updates tailored for Iowa's farmers. Together, we deliver the best of both worlds, local connection and industry expertise. It's all to keep you connected with the heartbeat of the heartland. The Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network, connecting rural Iowa with the news that matters to you.
Rod Stewart. When I see you tonight. A special evening with the icon. On a downtown train. A night of hit. After hit. After hit. With special guest Richard Marks. Friday, August 14th. Iowa State Fair Grandstand. Reserve tickets on sale now through iowastatefair.org. Don't miss an electrifying event. Friday, August 14th. Rod Stewart. Live.
You're listening to Iowa Ag Matters, and coming up in just a little bit on the show, we will hear from Gail Stratman of FMC. Dustin will talk about many different aspects of agronomy as we take a look at the crop conditions, and one of those things they will touch on is southern rust. But coming up next, it is the Basis Report. Dustin will have that next on Iowa Ag Matters.
Time to run down those basis numbers for you here on Iowa Ag Matters on this Monday. I'm Dustin Huffman. Taking a look at cash bids around the state, only 3 elevators have made any kind of changes to their bids. However, more elevators have jumped onto the November soybean contracts. I will run them down for you. ADM Burlington 16 cents under on corn, $4.33. Soybeans 8 cents under August at $12.05. Cargill and Eddyville 17 cents under on corn, cash bid $4.32. New Co-op Algona 33 cents under on corn, $4.16. Soybeans 25 cents under November at $11.91. Ag State Sheldon 19 cents under on corn, $4.30. Soybeans 40 cents under November at $11.76. Ag State Alta 29 cents under on corn, cash bid $4.20. Soybeans 35 cents under November at $11.81. Cargill Cedar Rapids 12 cents under on corn, $4.37. Soybeans even with August at $12.13. 5-Star Co-op Nashua 32 cents under on corn, $4.17. Soybeans 35 cents under at August at $11.78. Lincoln Way Energy Nevada 22 cents under on corn, $4.27 for the cash bid. ADM Des Moines a nickel under on soybeans for August, $12.08. New Co-op Red Oak 20 cents under on corn, $4.29. Soybeans 20 cents under November at $11.96. Mid-Iowa Cooperative Green Mountain 45 cents under on corn, $4.04 for the cash bid. Soybeans 50 cents under November at $11.66. At New Co-op in Sheraton, they're 24 cents under on corn, $4.25. Soybeans 25 cents under November at $11.91. Walk-On Feed Ranch 43 cents under on corn, $4.06. Soybeans 54 cents under August at $11.59. New Co-op Glidden 31 cents under on corn, they're at $4.18. Soybeans 25 cents under November at $11.91. Innovative Ag Farley 41 cents under on corn 408, soybeans 55 cents under August at 11.58, and Cargill Muscatine 23 cents under on corn 426, soybeans 18 cents under August, they're at 11.95. Cash corn and soybean bids are subject to change without notice. Always check with your local elevator on making sales to obtain the most recent price. With this check of your basis report on Iowa Ag Matters, I'm Dustin Huffman. We'll be right back after this.
Rod Stewart.
When I see you tonight,
A special evening with the icon.
on a downtown train,
A night of hit after hit after hit. With special guest Richard Marks. Friday, August 14th, Iowa State Fair Grandstand. Reserve tickets on sale now through iowastatefair.org. Don't miss an electrifying event. Friday, August 14th. Rod Stewart, live.
We've got more markets coming up here on Iowa Ag Matters, including a complete rundown of the midday grain and livestock prices, plus livestock analysis with Mark Magnuson. You can find all our content, including replays of this program, at iowaagnet.com. You're listening to Iowa Ag Matters on the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network.
This is Iowa Ag Matters, and it's on the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network. Dustin Huffman had the chance to speak with Gail Stratman of FMC. They touch on a lot of topics in relation to agronomy. One of those aspects that they will get into is southern rust. Here's Dustin with more.
We're on the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network and talking today with Gail Stratman of FMC. And Gail, we're talking here as just after we've seen 3 or 4 counties in Iowa show some positive results for southern rust. And I think, first of all, we should probably talk about the fact that this is still, even though it's in Iowa, it's a different scenario than what we saw last year, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, last year we had the situation where it was kind of the perfect storm for southern rust. We had inoculum infections that occurred really early in the season. I mean, you're talking, we were picking it up already in parts of the Midwest in June, mid-June, and then as we got into July, we had kind of a situation where we had really kind of consistently warm, but really consistently humid. And those are 2 things that southern rust really likes. And so, combined with the early infection, it just gave it enough time for that disease to really kind of explode and proliferate across the entire area. And so, it turned into a really bad situation last year where growers really saw the benefit of staying on top of southern rust throughout the growing season.
Now, obviously, just because it hasn't expanded as far as it did last year, it's still obviously something that producers want to keep an eye out for and want to make sure they're protecting for, if this were to be a situation, especially if you're in those southern tier counties of Iowa where it can sneak across the border from Missouri.
Oh, yeah. We've just barely gotten through pollination in a lot of areas. So we have a long ways to go to get to black layer and maturity on this corn. We're looking at 6 weeks in a lot of cases or more. So, in those areas where it has been picked up and we're starting to see it, the humidity and the moisture conditions, the heat that's coming on now is really going to be favorable for the development of that disease. So we need to continue to look at our corn crop and look at our disease spectrum and look at and see how that's progressing as we go forward here. There still may be some areas where treatment may be justified here in a couple of weeks. You don't need to maybe run right out right now and stir up a panic over southern rust, but we need to keep an eye on it and ensure that if we've treated fields, are the fungicides holding, and are we seeing that southern rust kept at bay, or is it starting to progress? Because in some cases we may need a follow-up or a second application this year, because southern rust is one of those diseases again that really kind of gets active as that corn reaches R2, the blister stage, and beyond. It really kind of gets more active in the later reproductive periods and can really affect grain fill, test weight, standability, and all sorts of things like that. So just because it's starting later this year doesn't mean we're out of the woods. We definitely got to stay on top of it and keep monitoring it through the over the next at least 4 or 5 weeks to see if we need to take action or not.
So then obviously we know that, if you're in an area where, especially like I said, those southern tier counties again, where it might be popping up close by, or it's possible that it could still show up, I mean, what kind of things should farmers be being proactive right now and say, hey, just because I'm not seeing it doesn't mean I couldn't go out and get ahead of it? Because we always know that once you see the symptoms of the disease, it's already too late.
Absolutely. There's still a lot of other benefits that go along with utilizing that fungicide application, even if I don't have a severe southern rust outbreak. In stressful conditions like this, we see benefits from stress mitigation. The reduction in ethylene production in the plant allows that plant to be a little more efficient in handling stressful conditions such as the high heat that we're going through right now. You see benefits in standability with those fungicides that are utilized at this time. So, just because we don't have a southern rust quote unquote outbreak doesn't mean that we can ignore the benefits of fungicides altogether. And so, there's other diseases out there we're watching for, whether that's gray leaf spot, northern corn leaf blight. Tar spot's been picked up in a lot of different areas here in the western corn belt, and so there's definitely benefits that go along with that. But the biggest thing is just continually, once a week, once every 10 days, hop out into those cornfields and just see how that crop is progressing and see if fungicide can still benefit you, and see if that disease is showing up. Because if you start to see it at low levels there, and we're in this blister milk stage kind of thing, you're probably going to see a yield benefit out of that fungicide at that point. Once we get well beyond that, we get into dent and those kind of things, then the ROI or the yield benefit becomes more and more of a challenge to get from a fungicide.
Hi, my name is Ethan Smith, and I've been a certified crop advisor in Iowa for about 6 years. The Iowa CCA program is valuable to me because it helps keep me informed on new topics and research around the industry, including soils, insects, diseases, and much more. It's also a great way to network with others around the state and beyond. Iowa is known for its crops, and that's why we're here. To learn more about becoming a certified crop advisor, visit iowacca.org.
Well, Dustin, in that conversation with Gail Stratman, some of those things that you talked about, including disease pressure, what were some of those things that you learned from Gail in discussing this season's growing conditions and what we're dealing with?
Well, it's a lot different than what we saw last year. I mean, that was the first and foremost thing we talked about. Was by this time last year, we were talking about southern rust all the way up into northern Iowa, Minnesota, the Dakotas, Montana. This is not the same situation. It is not uncommon for it to come up into some of the southern tier counties, southeastern parts of Iowa, because Missouri is usually about its stopping point, mostly because the winter here is not kind to the spores that set up for that disease. And so that's one thing you got to keep track of. Now, that does not mean if you're in northern Iowa that you should let your guard down and not think that maybe something could stir up. I mean, anything's possible, especially, we're talking about another round of storms coming through here very soon to break this heat. Not to say that current's going to come out of the south, but that's something you've got to think about. And so you also got to match it against things like tar spot, northern corn and gray leaf blight, all those kinds of topics out there. You got to have a whole holistic approach. You can't let your guard down, but you don't need to panic either. More Iowa Ag Matters in a moment.
Get in the fair spirit at the Iowa State Fair and save before you go. The countdown is on to the Iowa State Fair, and now's the time to plan ahead. With advance admission tickets, lock in your visit before you arrive and step into 11 days of live music, fair traditions, incredible food, and summer moments you look forward to all year long. Save $5 now. Advance tickets are available now at iowastatefair.org, on the app, and at participating Iowa Hy-Vee and Fairway stores. Celebrate fair spirit at the Iowa State Fair.
August 13th through the 23rd.
Well, coming up next, we're going to take a look at those midday market numbers. Though probably many of you would rather we just kind of skipped it for today, but we are going to get that analysis. Mark Magnuson's going to take a look at that coming up next. You can find all our content online at iowaagnet.com. You're listening to Iowa Ag Matters on the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network.
This is the Midday Market Update on Iowa Ag Matters. I'm Mark Magnuson. Joined at midday by Justin McKinney of Comstock for the Midday Market discussion. Justin, a lot of red on our screen continuing through midday. What's happening with the trade in the grains?
Big sell-off started last night, Mark, with the crude oil being down sharply. Currently, I know we're talking about grains, but flopping over to the crude oil to start this conversation, we're down over $6 on the crude today. Does not give a lot of underlying support to the row crops. We have corn off 12 on the old crop, new crop off 12 3/4. Moving on to the soybeans, down about 36 3/4. Export inspections today totaled 58.6 million bushels of corn. So 4-week average remains very strong at 62.9, well ahead of last year's 53.1 million bushels. Cumulative inspections at 2.965 billion. That's 25% ahead of last year. So all in all, corn export shipments, inspections, very good today. Flipping over to the soybean side of that world, 12.8 million bushels. We're within expectations. A little bit ahead of last year's 12.5. We're sitting okay. Bottom line takeaway, we don't traditionally sell a whole lot of beans between now and the new crop loading season. And in fact, both of our export sales, flash sales today, were for new crop beans, 132,000 metric ton to China and 126,000 to unknown, which very well could be China as well.
What's happening on the livestock side of the trade where there's also red on the screen?
Yeah, nothing great, Mark. We had that announcement. I'm sure you guys covered it this morning. On the Mexican border opening for feeder cattle. Right now, very wide range in the feeder cattle. We're down about $2.95 in the front. Unfortunately, you get past the first of the year, that January contract. I know there's limited volume out there, but it is trading down $10.35 right now. So feeder cattle taking a little bit on the chin today. And fat cattle holding in there, actually down $1.22 in the August. October's down about $2.65. And again, those markets just get worse the farther you go out on the cattle market.
That was Justin McKinney with Comstock. We will have a check of the numbers next.
Get in the fair spirit at the Iowa State Fair and save before you go. The countdown is on to the Iowa State Fair, and now's the time to plan ahead. With advance admission tickets, lock in your visit before you arrive and step into 11 days of live music, fair traditions, incredible food, and summer moments you look forward to all year long. Save $5 now. Advance tickets are available now at iowastatefair.org, on the app, and at participating Iowa Hy-Vee and Fairway stores. Celebrate fair spirit at the Iowa State Fair.
August 13th through the 23rd.
September corn down 12 cents at $4.52 1/4. August soybeans down 35 3/4 at $12.12 1/4. August soybean meal down 10.40 at $3.20.90. August soybean oil down 2.42 at $71.91. Chicago wheat down 10 3/4 at $6.67 1/4. Minneapolis wheat is down 9 cents at $7.06. On the Merc, August live cattle down $1.13 at $225.95. August feeder cattle down $3.20 at $342.13. August lean hogs down 10 cents at $102.75. August pork cutout unchanged at $114.88. Class 3 milk down 13 cents at $17.08. That was a check of the midday markets on Iowa Ag Matters. I'm Mark Magnuson.
Well, back on Iowa Ag Matters and back to Greg McBride of Allendale. He's been our market analyst today too, plus giving us the weekly export sales information. Right now, we're going to talk about the livestock side of the marketplace. Cattle and hogs having a rough day as well. Mark Magnuson's got more.
What's happening on the livestock side of the trade?
Well, we just finished a cattle on feed report and a cattle inventory report on Friday, pretty much as expected. On feed came in at 102%. The placements came in at 97%. Marketing is at 97%. So pretty much all as expected. We get every 3 months we get a breakdown of feedlots, and heifers were 37% of the feedlot in July. That's just under where it was at last year. We does show very little, very light heifer retention. So there is a conversation about the potential for seeing some expansion in this market. And then on top of these reports, which were lightly supportive, we then heard on Friday, and more confirmation was brought out over the weekend, that the USDA is now looking at opening the border between U.S. and Mexico. This is going to be basically the same plan that we saw last year that never really had a chance to get going because screwworm kicked back up. But they'll open one port in the next 30 days, see how that goes, make sure that it's stable, and then they'll open another and another and another, until the point where they're reopened and we're bringing in feeders from Mexico. So there is significant pressure in the cattle market. There has been. We saw cash cattle trading significantly lower again last week. I think it was about 6 to 7. We won't know the exact dollar amount lower until later on today, but we expect it was about $6 to $7 lower than the previous week. So we're working fat cattle down about $1.65 this morning, and we're working feeders down about $6 to $7. Both of those are off their daily lows here, but it is adding some pressure to the market here.
What's the best way for our listeners to get in touch for more marketing information?
Give us a call at 800-2-MARKET. That's 800-262-7538.
Greg McBride of Allendale, thanks so much for the time, and have a great day.
Thank you, Mark.
Alabama, live in concert. Friday, August 21st, 8 p.m., Iowa State Fair Grandstand. With special guest Exile. Like Grandma and Grandpa. Alabama, live. Roll on highway, roll on along, roll on daddy till you get there. Reserve tickets on sale now through iowastatefair.org. You gotta have a fiddle in the band. Alabama.
In rural Iowa, we know you're sold on your local radio station. The Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network partners with local Iowa stations to deliver the latest in agriculture news, including grain elevator prices, market reports, and ag policy news. Trusted local voices, trusted ag content. This message is brought to you by your friends at the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network, where Iowa Ag matters.
Coming up next, we will hear part of the discussion from the Iowa Farm Bureau Economic Summit with USTR, the former USTR, for the Trump administration 1.0, Robert Lighthizer, as he discusses trade and tariffs with Iowa Farm Bureau President Brent Johnson.
Back on Iowa Ag Matters, and we had that recent Iowa Farm Bureau Economic Summit, and we heard from IFB President Brent Johnson talking with former U.S. Trade Representative Robert Lighthizer about the current situation.
Pleasure to be here. I look forward to talking about these things. I listened to a little bit of your economic discussion. I didn't hear all of it, but I had heard all the rest of it before, and it'll surprise no one in this room that has followed me at all. I don't agree with very much of it. Obviously, my view is that trade is important. It's very important for some parts of agriculture. We've talked about this, but it's important for all parts of agriculture. It's very important in Iowa because Iowa focuses on corn and soybeans. And in the case of corn, where it's not a huge percentage, it has an impact way beyond the actual percentages because it sets prices. It just has a huge impact on the farming community. So we need lots of agriculture exports. And then the question becomes, how do you get that? And then the first thing is there free trade out there, right? This thing that we were taught in high school. And my position is that there never was free trade. The current trading system is broken. It's harming America dramatically, and I want to spend a second on that if I can. I'll try to. We don't have a lot of time, but I'll try to talk quickly. It's hurting America dramatically. It's hurting agriculture, not as dramatically, but substantially. And it's even hurting those commodity bull products for whom we actually have a surplus. It's hurting them also because they share in what the overall economy of the country. So as a general matter, I start with the proposition, what is the purpose of economic policy? What's the purpose of trade policy? And the purpose is not, I would suggest, to optimize the price of your t-shirt or your television or your can of soup. That's not the purpose. The purpose is that people who live in communities in Iowa and Ohio and the rest of the country have what John Maynard Keynes would call the good life, have a substantial life, that you stay married, you get the dignity of work, that you raise your children, that you go to church, that you go to Little League, that you make your community great. And then all of that together makes America great. That's the purpose. An economist will say, no, the real purpose is that a farmer in Iowa has 3 televisions. And my view is no. The purpose is that a farmer in Iowa stays married, raises his kids, doesn't drink, doesn't go on do drugs. His kids grow up. The kids are proud of their father because he works and their mother because she works. And the parents are hopeful for the kids. So let's start with that. So if that's your purpose, how do we get to that? And I would suggest that free trade hasn't done that. Let's talk about it. We have gotten to the point where this kind of devotion to this non-existent theology has created the following outcome. We now have trade deficits year after year. We've had them for decades. Indeed, we've had them for generations. And I'm kind of pulling back from ag, and then I want to bore in on ag because people are more interested in that. But it's important that people understand the big picture. So now we're running $1 trillion+ deficits. And I would say an accurate calculation is probably $1.5 trillion deficits. So now an economist will say, but what does that make? Think of all the nice things everybody has. And I have, I'll just go through very quickly 4 really bad outcomes. The first is what we're doing is we're transferring our wealth overseas for current consumption, not because of basic economics, but because of the industrial policy of other countries. China, for example, they have an industrial policy that is designed to run a trade surplus. And they have a whole lot of things. None of it is what economics that we learned in school. And tariffs are a tiny, tiny part of it. It's the banking system, it's currency manipulation, it's a tax system, it's labor laws, it's all of this stuff. So you say, what's the net effect of that?
ACM and CMA award winner, Hardy.
That's my favorite country song.
Live in concert.
I woke up on the wrong side of the truck bed this morning.
August 13th, 8 p.m., Iowa State Fair Grandstand.
You got it good, old boy.
With special guest McCoy Moore. Hardy Live. Reserve tickets on sale now through iowastatefair.org. Hardy 2026.
Thanks for tuning in to another edition of Iowa Ag Matters. Join us again tomorrow for more here on the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network. Thanks to Riley. Thanks to Dustin. I'm Mark Magnuson. You've been listening to Iowa Ag Matters on the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network. Find us online at iowaagnet.com.